All right, good evening. We're going to go ahead and call to order the workshop session. First item on the workshop this evening is discussion and presentation of the Lampasas County Chamber of Commerce and Visitor Center third quarter report. As Melissa makes her way to the dais, or to the podium, I want to go ahead and give those watching from home the phone number to call in, 512-556-0332.
Hello? Okay, there we go. So I'm just gonna start off. So the report that you received is much like all the other ones that I've submitted in the past. However, a discussion was had with Yvonne and Mandy and Finley last week in regards to the agreement that the chamber and the city have. And so when I came over for that agreement discussion, we also had talked about the quarterly report as it was submitted. Yvonne had noticed that there were 3 payments made in 2019 versus the 4 that are supposed to be made each fiscal year. And so therefore, there will be 5 payments made this year because one of the payments for the 2019 quarter were actually paid in January. So you may not have noticed that, but there was some bookkeeping issues in regards to the reports. So I will also be coming the second meeting in October for my Q4 report, which seems like a very short amount of time. But moving forward, we also wanted to possibly make a suggestion in the way that the bookkeeping has been happening over the past several years, that it might be more beneficial, possibly, to go on a biannual basis instead of each quarter reporting, to report once in April and then once in October, obviously coming from my HOP funding the same amount of times as requested, and then my budget in July. So it would cut down on the amounts of time, and then it would also help with the bookkeeping to do 2 quarters at a time. So that's just a recommendation and a suggestion, and I'll let Mandy
Let's first make sure council doesn't have any questions about the actual third quarter report that we've got submitted.
Okay.
Does council have anything they want to bring up or mention? No? Okay.
Everything looks okay.
So let's move on from that item and go into item number 3, which is discussion regarding Chamber of Commerce, Tourism, and Visitor Center agreement.
So on the agreement, just to kind of reiterate what she had just said, last year we actually paid out of the same line item for all of the events that she was requesting. This year we had put that in a separate one. So when she came to request for an event, it came out of a different line item that all the other organizations request out of, as in Springho, LAFTA, Vision. Her budget was just strictly what her budget was this last year that she presents to you. Unfortunately, there was some timing with her bookkeeper on one of the her last quarterly report from last fiscal year that didn't come in time before our books were closed, and so it fell into this one. So we're going to have 5 payments this year so we can get her back on track. And one of the things that she had just mentioned that we talked about for the agreement is to make it easier on Yvonne, especially, is having her come, and also on her, because she's having to kind of stop what she does every 3 months to put all this together, and she's waiting on a bookkeeper to put together all the backup, and a lot of times it's easier if she can put the first and second quarterly report together and come once to you in April, and then the third and fourth quarter would come by the end of October so that we can get it in time before we close our books. So that was one of the changes I believe that we had recommended in here on the agreement. I believe one of the other ones that we had talked about, and I think you took the form that we had highlighted. Do you have it with you? You took the one that we had made notes on. So I know under the section 2, the funds to be provided, we had talked with Yvonne about it had said exceeding a certain amount, and I think what Yvonne had suggested was not to exceed whatever the budget amount was. Is that correct? Whatever the budget amount is that is approved in her budget. So we'll just put whatever the budget amount is. We don't have to put a number there. Does that make sense? Okay.
So I get approved, well, it's the same thing that I highlighted, but I get approved a budget amount in July, and that budget amount needs to reflect in the agreement the same amount, so it doesn't exceed the amount that's approved.
Well, I
That's,
think what we'd like to put is just not to exceed the approved budget, the words approved budget, instead of an actual amount. Yeah.
yeah.
And then the only other thing I think was the payment schedule, which we just talked about, is coming biannually instead of quarterly. Is that all the only? Okay.
Mr. Clark?
I just have one question, and it's for Yvonne, just to make sure, is everything that they're recommended going to be, won't give you any problem? Okay.
And the only two things that were of an issue with the agreement are those two items?
And your board has already reviewed and are good with that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I was curious, so what, I mean, is it just because you need more time? Because if your bookkeeper's lagging it quarterly, are they gonna lag it biannually?
No, the problem is becoming when I do come to bring those in, I have to stop and do a report for 3 months instead of 6 months. And so by the time my bank statements come in, the dates that we decided, the April and the October dates, give me enough time to get my receipts in, over to the bookkeeper, to get a ledger created, and then to submit it, because I also have to submit that a week before the council meeting.
And you also, with your quarterly, I mean, with each of those quarter submissions, any events that took place within that quarter, you're reporting on those within that report, so.
So a lot of times, those receipts are not
Correct.
in either. Like, for instance, let's take, I mean, I guess I could take any event. So the 10K happens in July, and I have to report that, but the following month practically, and then some of my receipts haven't cleared the bank for that. So I don't have the support because they'll come in the following month. So
What she's required to submit when she does her submission to Yvonne is the receipt and the proof of payment of that. And some of that is not available by the time that quarter is up. And does that make sense?
It does, but I think there's still gonna be a problem at 6 months too, because you're gonna have the same thing happen in July.
I mean, really, there hasn't been a problem now. It's just been that one quarter that it happened, and I think that was in December or January, and I believe that I had the flu at that time. So there was a week lapse there. So it's not going to be a standard practice. It's just trying to help Yvonne and trying to help me.
It's to say, if the chamber's fine receiving only 2 checks a year for their,
Yeah.
if that works for their budgeting purposes,
Correct.
and Yvonne, and that cuts down on Yvonne having to process 2 additional payments a
Well,
year.
it is streamlined. It's a streamline.
Right.
Yeah. So. But there should not be any, I mean, to clarify, there should not be any issues from the bookkeeper. It was just there was extenuating circumstances for that one quarter, and it got pushed to 2020. So.
Any additional questions for Melissa? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 4, discussion and updates related to COVID-19 pandemic.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. For today, the latest numbers that I actually have transpired on yesterday. We currently have 67,234 active cases in the state of Texas. We have 15,522 fatalities. Currently in Lampasas County, we have 24 active cases. As a state and as a county, we have been trending upward for the last 2 weeks. We did expect this. This is, as far as we can tell, this is attributed to the beginning of school, colleges, Labor Day, that type of stuff like that. As an example, that 2 weeks ago, our county was at 18. We're now at 24. That doesn't seem like a big increase, but that is a 25% increase just in 2 weeks for us. Whether that is cause for alarm or anything like that, I think the discussion has been when we were going to get out of this and we were going to move in a different direction. And as far as the county, would they seek any type of a pass on this? We have to keep our numbers below 20 for a good period of time. And I think this is evidence of a little bit of the wisdom that we've had so far from the leadership within the city and the county to just wait and see what happens with that. It's fixing to get into cold weather, fixing into cold and flu season. A lot of that has been talked about as far as on the conference calls that I make. How are we going to distinguish between those? They say that it'd be up to the doctors and the test results, but we do know that we're fixing to be inside more and more, and you kind of have to treat COVID the same way that you did the flu is what they've said. So be careful around people that you know are sick, that are contagious, and that's where we're at from there. Does anybody have any questions regarding COVID? All right.
Thank you, Chief. Item number 5 is discussion regarding city council work plan. Before Finley gets started, I believe Ms. Monroe had a quick comment regarding this.
Oh, I just was curious, Finley, if it might not be better to wait until the election since it's so near. We will have at least one new council person. Might be advantageous to that person to come in the same as all the rest of us.
That's certainly one of the comments within my presentation. We ask you to take a look at basically 3 things initially, and then we've received a request for perhaps some additional prioritization on some projects that could or could not be included. But I think the 3 things that we kind of put right up front is, is the timing make sense? What does the process look like? And then what does the format look like in terms of what's included within that? So I don't disagree with you. I think this is certainly an item that I think I've somewhat warmed council up to. It's one of the items on the list that we need to get off the back burner from after budget, as well as the disruption and the restrictions related to COVID that kind of set us back a little bit. Similar to what we're taking a look at in some of my report items on the personnel policy, as well as the recent comp plan meeting. So this just represents one task that we ask council to provide some input on as we move forward and as we bring these things from the back burner to in front of you again. But I'd be happy to proceed with whatever means you'd like.
Oh, great. I just thought before we took any actions on most of these things, it would be good to have the other person's input.
Surely. Like I said, this is part of a list of items that staff discussed at staff meeting. You've got included in your packet. In this packet, I believe I emailed this to you Sunday and said it was in your box. Hopefully you picked it up. But it includes the project listing after these slides, the CIP summary statement. I think the importance or the relevance of that is the 10 items that were listed within that report as areas of emphasis, which I think dovetail into what council may consider a priority. The CIP project list, as well as the comp plan recommendations that were just kind of re-vetted again on the 21st. Those are basically a result of your discussions and community input. Some of the, in bringing this forward, we will understand that you may modify, amend, change. You may break this into different pieces. We did receive a request for a listing of projects, which is also included. These are projects that are currently on our plate that we're working through. I think you've got a lot of documents that you've been working on that provide the basis for setting priorities. And like I said, you may or may not choose to include kind of a project priority listing in a work plan. You may keep it separate, or you may say, hey, this is not needed because it's a duplication of some other documents that we have. Just very quickly in a few slides. So again, the 3 things, Mayor Pro Tem, that I mentioned in my opening comments were, time. We do have elections coming up. Do you want additional input? Unfortunately, some of our tasks are related to community engagement, which means that you got to talk to people. You got to get groups of people together. And so how do we manage some of the previous tasks in our work plan with our ability to engage the community as we have in the past through town hall meetings and that sort of thing? The process, and I'm talking about the process that council would like to go through on this. additional meetings? Do you want to do it exclusively through the workshop session? We've done tours in the past, and I think we still owe at least a couple of you a tour of the water wastewater building that we're happy to provide, even without the council as a whole. And then also the format, exactly, we've got a lot of planning projects, and probably first and foremost our comprehensive plan. And our comprehensive plan is in the status right now that we have recommendations, we have identified tasks. We're going to get an expanded version of those tasks and action steps, as well as the next step to that is, okay, how are we going to implement this over the next 5 to 10 to 15 years? And so that also serves as a roadmap for addressing not only council priorities, but community priorities. And then the inclusion of capital projects and priorities, whether you decide to or not, that could be a slight difference in the format. And then also, what are we duplicating? Do we need to include CIP, a comp plan, council work plan, et cetera? But those are just some of the things that we'd appreciate your input on. In terms of setting priorities, just a couple of comments. The council work plan is meant to be those items and tasks that are related to your identification of needs. So when we started doing this in 2014-15, it was, how do we engage our community more? How do we provide better services? How do we recognize committee members and staffing? And so there has been a lot of, I think, positive things come from the plan in terms of the action steps. It's inclusive. You can incorporate the capital priorities and work plan, timelines and benchmarks. We've done that in the past. Request for project list to prioritize staff of work. So that is included, and I guess just a couple of comments related to that is, those are only the capital projects and planning projects that are currently being conducted. In other words, what's currently on our plate. It does not include any major maintenance or fleet. And you may want to consider that, if you so choose to do that, consider incorporating that with a council work plan. And just some other, and I'll somewhat editorialize on this, but I think that it's important, particularly from a staff standpoint, that we differentiate between singular and collective priorities. Certainly there are items that I think are important that I may bring to council, but unless council as a whole discusses them, vets them, and pushes them forward, we don't have the buy-in, we don't have the engagement from council. So certainly from staff's perspective, it's those items that are collective priorities. In other words, that council says as a whole, this is what we think is important. And certainly there are things that I thought were important that council didn't think was important. There are items, for example, like a parks master plan. I think we all realize the importance of that. We all realize that it's been identified through the comprehensive planning process, but until we get council saying, hey, let's scope it, let's fund it, here are the dollars, and until it's in the budget, it's not on our plate. And so collectively, that's what we'd like council to provide us the guidance. How priorities are currently being set, and again, I may be missing something here, but it's identification in a planning activity. Through the comprehensive plan, it's a very inclusive and community-driven, council, planning commission-driven list of items that we want to tackle, what our community looks like, what our vision for our community is. Water, wastewater study and studies, compensation study. We've done some internal work on something like that, but those are just examples. I think the CIP program, it certainly this year more than ever brought to light something very important in the timing of the plan, the CIP plan versus the budget process. And you might think, yeah, they're kind of stacked on one another, but really that CIP plan is done usually 2-3 months ahead of when we really get into the meat and potatoes of budgeting. And this year, because of COVID, et cetera, that CIP plan was here. We started hammering on the budget, and you could certainly connect the dots in terms of this is a planning document, a budgeting tool, an identification of capital priorities and needs. And so I think this year more than ever before, that CIP program, as it was reviewed, acknowledged, and accepted by council, was just the timing of it, I think, was a real eye-opener, and hopefully it was an eye-opener for council as well. The ultimate prioritization that council has is in your budget. If you put dollars to a project, there's no clearer directive from staff than that. And conversely, the lack of funding for a project doesn't mean we can't do some spade work, but in terms of a priority, if you put dollars on a project, it's on the list, it's on our plate, we're working it. And certainly occasionally we have staff council interaction with the public, a need is identified, and it's introduced either as a report or a workshop item. Doesn't necessarily mean it's on our plate yet, but we want to make sure that council understands, the conversations that are going on outside of this meeting. That may not be a project this year, next year, but maybe it's on the CIP in a year or two. Maybe in a couple more years there's funding available for it. So, I see that as kind of how a lot of our priorities are brought forward and ultimately end up on the CIP program and ultimately in a fiscal year budget. So the next steps, again, timing, and maybe just to discuss the Mayor Pro Tem's comment, maybe timing is the first thing. Is this the right time to initiate this? What's included? What information do you need? What process do we want to take on in terms of additional meetings, outside facilitation, retreat tours? So, question marks or the questions are, do we move forward? How do we move forward? And what do you want to include? And so I've included, as I've said, you've got a project listing. And again, I may have missed one or two, but this is what's on our plate in terms of not only capital projects, but also planning projects that we're currently have under contract. And obviously what we've said through the budget process is those planning projects will likely result in some sort of capital project. Through the budget process, just as a reminder, council and staff felt like it was hard to budget for undefined projects, as well as hard to budget for projects where we didn't know what the participation maybe from a beneficiary might be. So those aren't included, but certainly our eyes are open, and we know that at the conclusion of these projects, we're likely to get something that we have to fund and prioritize and include in the budget. But with that, I think I did spend some time meeting with Councilman Williamson and Councilman Clark, and they may have some comment as well. But certainly, I look forward to your input and guidance.
I just want to point out real quickly, I think a common theme or a repetitive word in the presentation Finley just gave us was the word priorities or prioritize. I think it's very important as a council that we understand that it is this forum that we're sitting in this evening is where you express what your desires are for those priorities and what things you'd like to have prioritized, because it does have to be a collective council decision to direct staff to move forward with something. So one-on-one meetings are not necessarily going to accomplish what you want, because there's still 6 other people who have to get behind an idea. So I'm very serious when I encourage council, this is the opportunity to bring up things that you want addressed or you think maybe are not being moved at the pace that you wish for them to, so that we can all collectively support that idea and it not just be coming from one individual member.
One of the things that part of this report is based on a request that I had with Finley in regards to, I felt like with him we had so many balloons or balls up in the air, it's hard for him to know which ones to focus on. And I was hoping that maybe in this next year between the elections and before we start the budget process, that we could meet once, twice, however many times we think is necessary to collect some priorities, a consensus from the council. I realize that we're not ever going to have the same necessarily number one project, but at least to get a consensus of, so that he knows and his staff will have some idea of what we're trying to shoot for in the next budget process. I think it helps him allocate funds a whole lot easier, and it'll make our budget process quite a bit further. We have a lot of special interest groups and other things that are asking for items that we all know about, and I just would like to see us do that sometime before the next budget cycle.
I think our work plan workshops and meetings that we've had in the past have been a useful tool because it's brought all of, it's put us all on the same playing field. And then I think on the flip side, it's been a benefit to staff because they got to hear from council what we wanted, what would matter to us. And so I think what you're looking for is hopefully going to be played out through this process because, as you said, it is very important for both sides.
Well, I just, sometimes our workshop is covered with so many items, I just don't know that a workshop or two will give us enough time to cover everything we need to get a consensus.
I would
I would not be above
to say.
trying to meet at another posted time.
I would just like to say that I felt very comfortable with the retreat that we had several years ago. Also, the touring that we did as a group when several of us were able to meet and go see. For instance, I have not seen the wastewater plant yet either. I want to see that. But I think as a group, it's easier to express yourself and find out if other people are in agreement. The retreat, I think, was a huge benefit for me.
I think that's the format that I benefited from the most. Chuck, the same for you?
Yeah,
I think we spent a whole day together, and that's a lot of time with all of us, but I think that's the format we benefited from the most as a council if staff has the availability to do that again.
it's the same way when we went over and saw the Central Texas wastewater, knowing where our water for the city comes from and how it operates, and those kind of things. It's like the analysis of the hostess house. I know you're going about doing that now, but I'd kind of like to go back over there again because I've just been there when we've had meetings and things to really see once the analysis is done, what are we actually talking about? Not putting money to it at that point in time, but what does it need? And there's so many things that are like that. I know you're getting into a thing tonight with Jason that probably is going to be very demanding for time and attention. I don't have any problem with waiting until November, whether I'm here or now or not. But it's one of those things of, I think at some point, the CIP process, as you indicated, is a very effective tool. And a lot of this was identified in the CIP. It's just council making time to be able to go over it and review it and go along with it. Consensus of opinion is what I'm after.
Rest of the council agree that that's the format we'd like to use?
Yeah, I would certainly agree with Council Member Monroe in regards to retreat. I know that staff went to some when I worked here before with council, and I thought it was a very effective tool.
Before the people at home get really wound up at the word retreat, it's actually a full day of working locally in a city building where we start at the beginning of the day and council and staff work together all day long.
It's a working meeting.
We're not at a resort. We're not having a catered dinner. It's an all-day work session. So maybe Becky could shoot out some possible dates that work for staff and see if we can.
After the election.
Is that what council thinks we need to do, is wait for the election?
Yes.
Does that work for staff? Okay. Is that everything you needed from us? Okay, thank you. Item number 6, discussion and updates related to City of Lampasas Public Works projects.
Mayor and council. Let me get this set. Yeah, I'm up here today to talk about the Public Works update on some projects we're doing. Today I'd like to be discussing Avenue E, progress on it. We're going to discuss wastewater treatment plant, septic calling, some upper pressure plane, and some ejection sites. I've got Jason Jones with Jones Heroy here, along with Mr. Van Sims, my superintendent, to discuss most of these projects. Jason will be discussing like the treatment plant, what's going on with the septic hauling, the upper pressure plane, and some ideas on the ejection sites. And he also will update you on the wastewater study and the upper pressure plane study we're trying to complete, kind of where he's sitting with that. And as far as Avenue E, from Spring to Porter, it's to grade. They should be putting cement down. They hoped today, but they didn't make it, so probably Wednesday, Thursday. They've had quite a few issues. Everything's so shallow out there. We've hit foam, we've hit gas. I mean, it's just been a nightmare. Everything's like 6 inches deep. They just threw it in the ground. They didn't care where it was. So we've had to do a lot of moving of utilities and stuff like that, but it's getting there. And they should, after they start pouring there from Spring to Porter, they're going to move over from Spring to Ridge and start the upgrade, start grading it out and getting it ready, so that when they finish up the top part, they'll come down to the bottom. And then, and all the drainage boxes have been done. It's all ready. With that heavy rain we had, it really worked well over there. Water flow just didn't flood up over there or anything. So at this time, I'm ready to move on to the wastewater treatment. If Jason would come up.
Ricky, have they been pretty understanding?
Yes,
Okay.
very. Just had one or two, but most of them have just been wonderful. Their main concern is they hauled down that road when it was like it is. They're scared what's going to happen now, because they do move through there. And what you're about to see now, we've met with Jason several times. This is very informative. Please ask questions about what we're seeing coming. I've learned a lot just from meeting with Jason and Van and them. So if you don't mind, please, if you got any questions, please be free to ask.
Mayor, Council, thank you for the opportunity to be here. I gave staff a 2-page handout this afternoon. I wanted to make sure, did you guys get a chance to get a copy of that or not? If you didn't, that's not a big deal.
I don't think so.
No? Okay. Well, no worries. I'm going to talk from it. So, and the first thing I think everybody probably wants to talk about is the wastewater treatment plant. And for good reason. What I've got on the easel here is a copy of what you've got on the screen in front of you. And I've put a few more things on here. I'm going to point to them and talk about them, just so you understand the layout. I understand some of you may not have been to the wastewater treatment plant. So first of all, I'd like to just kind of show you what's going on here. It's a pretty big site, and most of what you see on the site was built in the 90s. In the 90s, the city was going under an enforcement period with its wastewater discharge with the regulatory agency, and was under a lot of pressure. So these facilities were built in, and they were built the last 30, 40 years, and they've been performing well for the city since then. So this right here on the right of the picture is what we call the city's main wastewater treatment plant. And that's kind of this site that I'm outlining in here. You've got your basins here. This main plant was designed for to treat 1.5 million gallons per day of wastewater flow coming from the city's domestic customers. And you're less than, you're about 35% of that right now or so with your city's customers. So you've got a lot of room to grow into. At the time, there were some pre-treatment facilities built over here. At the time in the 90s, it was called H&M Foods, where Windsor sits now. Same type of situation going on, and they're actually contributed to the enforcement period that you were in the 90s. They were sending you very high-strength wastewater from their food processing, and the city elected to build these facilities out here to pre-treat the flow stream coming from the processing plant there. It's got its own dedicated gravity sewer line that comes in through this blue line right here, and it gets pumped from a lift station into a little equalization basin, and then gets repumped and is treated right here. And from here, it makes its way back to the headworks of the main wastewater treatment plant where it gets treated again. So the idea of the pre-treatment is to knock it down from really high strength, industrial sewage down to domestic strength so that your wastewater treatment plant can handle it. Okay? That was built in the 90s. So in 1996, H&M Foods was flowing about 50,000 gallons per day on an average basis. And then it was sending you a loading in terms of an organic loading of 750 pounds per day of biological oxygen demand. So that's kind of this mass they were sending you every day on average was 750 pounds per day, and that was in the 90s. And this facility right here was oversized at the time. They built some growth into it, and it's been operating. Somewhere in there, Windsor has grown from 50,000 gallons per day to today, they're at about 150,000 gallons per day. Yes, Ajinomoto, Windsor, sorry. H&M Foods at the time has gone through 2 or 3 different name changes, and now it's Ajinomoto, Windsor. They're flowing at about 145,000 gallons per day. And their wastewater loading coming from that facility has gone from 750 pounds per day to a little over 3,000 pounds per day of organic loading, okay? So that gives you a picture of what's happened over the last 25 years. And over the last 25 years, this facility right here has pretty much remained the same. You know, it hasn't been expanded, et cetera. What's been happening is the flow coming from that facility goes through this dedicated pipeline through this pump station. Whenever the flows are too high for that little pump station to handle, as it was originally designed, it follows this orange line right here. And it goes down to the main wastewater plant. It's called a bypass. It's a very good idea. If that pretreatment unit's ever down for maintenance, you're still sending that flow to your main plant. It doesn't go directly to the creek, it doesn't overflow, and it gets treated. So what this facility can't handle, your main wastewater treatment plant has been handling.
Does that happen a lot?
Well, as the food processing plant has grown over the last 25 years, you've had to rely more and more on your main wastewater treatment plant to process their waste instead of using the pretreatment facility. The pretreatment facility is still working, but it's at its limit. You know, it's doing all it can, so the overage is being handled by your main plant.
Do you know what the limit is? Because it had jumped from, you had said it jumped like basically 3 times. So what's the limit or approximate limit? Do you know?
Okay, so there's a pretreatment agreement between the city and Windsor. And in that pretreatment agreement, it specifies those limits. And the limit in that agreement is 2,500 pounds per day of BOD. And you're getting about 3,002. I'm sorry, the limit in the agreement is 2,500 pounds per day.
And we're getting what?
3,200 in round numbers currently. So the reason that you asked, why did this happen? What we've done as part of this study is we've taken a detailed analysis of what's going through this bypass line. It's been known for quite some time that when the flows exceed the capacity of this lift station, it flows through that bypass. We didn't know how often it happened, how much it happened. So what we've been able to do is Van and his crew installed a flow meter, a temporary flow meter. They rented one on this bypass line, and there was about a 3 or 4 month period last year that we collected data there. And then we parked some composite samplers, data collection units and samplers at Windsor site over the last few months, and we've collected enough information to be able to know exactly what they're sending you. Previous to this period, it's been grab samples at this location and never a real lengthy extent and analysis of the data. So it is a bit of a surprise that it is this high. We did not understand that it was this high. And the reason it has not come up from TCEQ's end is because your main plant is doing its job, and what's going to the creek is still under the permit limits. So you're making good water, you're not polluting the creek. That's the good news of this story. You're not where you were in the 90s. So there's an opportunity here to solve the problem before you get to that point. So that's the good news of the story, okay?
Is the bad news how much it cost us to take advantage of that
That's
opportunity?
going to be the hard problem to solve, that's right. Things were cheap in the 90s. They're always get expensive, but plant work has certainly gotten very expensive over even the last 2 years. The electrical trades, concrete, lumber, we've seen it in residential. We're seeing the same thing, but even more so in industrial and commercial, okay?
Jason, who owns the lines from the Ajimoto down to the pretreatment plant?
The city does.
City does?
Yeah, there's another slide. a
What kind of
picture-
shape are they in? Oh, I may be getting ahead of you. Go
No,
ahead.
no, that's fine. This is a little hard to see. I didn't bring a big copy of this, but the line of delineation between the city's responsibility and Ajinomoto Windsor's is the street to the east. Is that Hackberry Street? Yeah. From that point downstream, it's the city's responsibility. And that pipe is, I believe it's a 15, but it's been aligned to a 10. So the pipe's in good shape. It's got a liner inside of it, and it gets cleaned quite regularly by city crews because it's quite frequently clogged up by grease. So it's on a regular cleaning schedule. Okay. There's another slide here. The next one is some numbers. And this is a summary of kind of what I told you that's in your packets. And it compares what this pretreatment plant and the pretreatment permit, the limits are versus what we've been seeing from the food processing facility. And that little lift station there is designed for 100 gallons per minute. During this peak flow event, when things are flowing through the bypass, we're seeing as much as 250 gallons a minute there. That's what we recommend designing the new facility to. And the next couple of lines there, the average daily flow, I want to note that you've got two things working against you here. You've got a growth coming from the food processing facility, and then there was a disconnect, and we've talked about it with staff. That pretreatment facility in the permit, it allows for them to give you 2,500 pounds per day of BOD. This facility right here, we reversed engineered it, and it can treat about 1,800 pounds per day. So it was actually, the actual capacity of this guy is about 30% less than what is in the agreement with, and that's been consistent all the way back since 1997. That's not something that's happened in the last few years. I think it's simply the numbers are very confusing whenever you're talking about flow, biological treatment capacity. I think there's just something that got disconnected between the engineer and the attorneys and the folks negotiating this agreement 25 years ago. So that's working against you. So that's the reason why some of these percentages are so high here. The fats, oils, and grease is another big one. They've got a limit in their permit of about 50 pounds per day, and based on our sampling, we're seeing closer to 250 pounds per day. All of these numbers vary tremendously. I just want to say that. We're seeing it in the data based on what they're doing from day to day, cleaning operations versus what they're producing. I'm not sure exactly what goes on there, but there's a lot of variability in these numbers. And I think there's a lot of opportunity to clean them up before you see it. So, and we're going to make some of those recommendations forthcoming. We've got a report coming. We're trying to deliver that to staff shortly. I wanted to get it to them prior to today, but just wasn't able to get that done. But we're ready to deliver this information so that it can be vetted.
Is there going to be a shared cost with Angimoto to, since they're the one, their facility is the one causing such increase?
So in the numbers, in our analysis, we've actually broken that down. Each treatment unit, we've assigned a percentage, cities versus theirs on cost. And you put the whole thing together, it's about 20% city, 80% Ajinomoto. There's some solids handling improvements that we've got here. You've got what's called a belt press right here in this building. Essentially what a belt press does is it squeezes the water out of the sludge so that you don't have to haul off 90%, 99% water when you're removing the solids from the plant. And this belt press right here is 25 years old. Can't get parts for it anymore. It's in a state of disrepair when it is. It takes 6 months to fix it. So we've got a new belt press building right over here that would be a shared cost between the city and Anjanimoto, Windsor, and that right here is the majority of the city's share. The rest of it is the majority of their share. Okay.
If I may, during some of the discussions today, a lot of this is just growth as well. The plant was built in 93, the pretreatment.
I think 98 timeframe, late 90s.
97, 98. And it was built for what was going on at the time with a little capacity, and they've just grown that much in their production efforts, and our plant's still the same size as it was. The other thing I'd like for you to touch on is, since you have the wastewater treatment plant up here, is the septic haulers.
Yes, okay, okay. So if you look at the numbers and you crunch them down, and on this sheet right here, there's the third box down is for your wastewater treatment plant. And your main facility right here, plus this facility, has got a combined capacity to treat 2,754 pounds per day. Remove that much BOD. Your current condition is about 3,000 pounds per day after it goes through the pretreatment facility right here and all that. And we're at about 112% of the biological capacity of your main wastewater plant. Now keep in mind, this goes up and it goes down. And so what this number is, it's an average plus a standard deviation of what you're getting. You got two things. Obviously, Anjanimoto Windsor has grown in their strength and their flow. And another thing that's going on here is this main facility was designed in the 90s for what we thought a typical residence would produce about 200 milligrams per liter of BOD. Now we're seeing, and we sampled your municipal stream here, it's about 300 milligrams per liter because of the water savings devices that are in homes now. You know, we're serving more people, but the volume of water coming to this facility has not increased at that same rate. So you've got growth in your city, your concentrated wastewater, and so those two things combined, your main treatment capacity in these aeration basins right here is at capacity. And that's with the septic loading that we've been seeing in years past. And that represents about 8-10% of that number is the septic loading. You ask why we haven't seen it in our permit, and it's simply because you've got so much extra capacity, hydraulic capacity in these clarifiers and in your UV disinfection coming out the back end of the plant because you're only flowing it at 37% of the 1.5 MGD. That's saving you right now, is that clarifier capacity, okay? And so what city staff has seen this year is when they're getting the septic trucks offload into this headworks right here, the main treatment plant before it goes through the process, and when they offload into here, they're seeing the oxygen levels in these tanks. They see a shock, and they lose the oxygen level and they lose the biological capacity of these tanks for a period of time.
That's why they've been having to add bugs to the tank.
Yes, yes, yes. And I'll let Van speak to exactly what he's been seeing. I think one of the two basins is seeing it worse. Okay. So we spent a little time out there trying to work with Van, trying to optimize things between these two basins, so we're not seeing that impact. But I think it's kind of a canary in the coal mine of what you're getting from Anjanimoto.
Is it in part of the agreement with them? Well, I guess this is more of a Finley question. Is it in part of the agreement we have with them with the capacities and all that, that when this needs to be upgraded, they'll have to help pay for that?
The agreement addresses, like Jason mentioned, the flows, the loading, and it also has the ability for us to say if certain loading is happening over a time period, then we can go back to them and upcharge them. But in terms of capital improvements, it's not addressed. The city certainly has the ability to say, you know, we will not accept you have to treat that to an acceptable level before we will even take that effluent. So I think there are a number of things that, and certainly when we initiated this study, I think the parties understood that there could and very well would be some sort of capital improvement associated with the findings. So I think that's subject to negotiation and discussion between the parties.
Finley, how old is that agreement with Windsor, Ajinomoto?
We just renewed that agreement this past year. I think as you recall, there was a period of time where we could not get it executed, but they finally did. And it was for a 4-year term. We have, since I've been here, it was by and large, with the exception of the identification of the costs, the actual costs. It's by and large been the same agreement that we've had since the 90s in terms of, them paying for the pre-treatment at, I believe currently it's about $6,700 a month, in addition to what their domestic or what their normal sewer rate would be.
Jason, if we were to cut the load from Ajinomoto to receive only the contracted amount, does that solve all problems to date? Or are there other things that exist because we've not been aware of that excessive load?
What it doesn't, well, the city still has some improvements it needs to make at this facility. I mean, there's no doubt about that. The solids handling has been rolled into this study. That was a discussion early on with staff, and we knew that was a need. So there's that. And the septic haulers that are currently offloading into the headworks here, they're shocking the plant. They'll always shock the plant. What we've done is we've designed some preliminary designed some headworks here for the septic haulers to be able to offload into what we call a septic receiving station, and that all would get combined and be pre-treated with the Ajinomoto flows. So those two things I think are still very important to the city, and I would recommend those be done, regardless of them reducing their flows.
What is the timeline for those type of projects to begin?
I don't think we have one yet. It's not, like I said, the sky's not falling currently. The city's got an operating belt press. The problem is, and it's got an option, when this belt press goes down, you can bring trucks in and haul that sludge, wet. It's a substantial cost, though. And so that's the downfall of waiting, is the wet haul cost.
The city never wins when we gamble. So I don't know that waiting tends to bode well for us.
Yeah.
So in the event that council determines this to be an immediate priority, how long of a project are these things that you're recommending?
Okay, just in general rule of thumb terms, I would say you've got another 2 to 3 years before this is done. These types of projects take a long time to do. Construction, bidding, that sort of thing could be an 18-month ordeal. And
Which is another reason not to wait if it takes that long to complete.
That's assuming nothing changes.
Right, right.
Jason, I think it's important for council to also understand that in addition to capital items, I think one of the things we've asked Jason to look at is what sort of operational items can we do. Are there ways to do what you suggested, Mayor, which is limit the loading coming in? Is that construction of additional grease interceptors on their site, or cleaning methods and means and methods, et cetera? So I think our hope is that this report will be inclusive of those types of recommendations as well.
Yes, we've discussed that with staff, and we're going to make a list of things, the low-hanging fruit, do this, do this, do this, and it's going to be the best bang for your buck. So.
I don't want, for me personally, in my opinion, I don't think that we allow Van's entire facility to be taken advantage of by Ajinomoto. While that may not be their intent, that's exactly what's happening to the system. And the effect of that is our septic haulers are unable to load here. What that means, if you work backwards, is if we don't have a way to unload septic, then we have septic tanks that are full because they can't be pumped. So that's an impact on our residents. That's where we have to place a priority. We can't place one business's needs above the needs of our of our residents that rely on septic systems. We've got to find a fair middle ground so that we're able to do all the things that we need to be doing.
Are the types of production lines that they have at Ajinomoto reflective of an increase in some of this? I mean, I know they have 2 or 3 different lines that they carry over there of production, but we went through that, Misty, that plant, year ago, I guess it was, about a year ago, but it was very interesting, to see what they do and how they do it. But I just didn't know whether, I've heard issues over there about whether it's dry mix that's going on the floor and they're not sweeping it up, they're pushing it into the sewer system also too. Have we ever asked that question of them of what maybe benefits they could do? That's where that low-hanging fruit you're talking about, Jason, but I don't know what our relationship is with them.
Can we hand him the microphone or something?
From day one, 10 years ago, we've been dealing with rubber gloves, trash, chicken parts, whatever. And we've had sit-down meetings with supervisors over there, showed them the pictures. Actually, they showed up on site. They came to see it. Okay, we'll do this. We'll bolt the drains down. We'll make sure this happens. We'll make sure this happens. They went from employees cleaning up to a contract company. Nothing changed. They went from the contract company back to employees. Nothing has changed. Everything that we've asked them to do, they started off doing it well, and then it petered out. And that's just the nature of the beast. That's exactly what's going to happen at 3 o'clock in the morning when, the supervisor's wherever, and you're ready to go home, Sweep it down the drain instead of picking it up, putting it in the trash can.
Advanced states, that now it's 24/7. He said on weekends that it used to be, that the plant would improve and it'd settle down. But he said they're busy now. It's 24/7. So that's what I mean. They're pushing a lot to us.
So, I feel like once this report is completed, we've got to sit down. There is no more waiting. We can do everything that we can on our end, both physically and financially, but we're not the sole, reason that we're in the situation that we're in.
I also think that in Jason's report, we'll have some numbers to be able to show them that gives us substantial background.
The pictures and things, is that something you've maintained kind of records of? Are you able to, if we were to have a meeting, does staff have the proof of the things that we receive and how?
You know what? After our incident with the losing the computers, I'm not going to say that we have very many pictures left.
Can we start maybe?
Yeah, we can start taking pictures.
Let's start documenting on our end what we're dealing with so that we're able to show it, prove it, and, sometimes impact is visual. So.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. I've emailed Bruce several pictures.
So those pictures probably still exist within our email records, Monica? Okay.
Got lost in the numbers. I missed your question. No, you got one. It's just your turn. Okay. I hear the urgency, and I understand it, and we'll certainly get you the report as soon as we can so you guys can move on.
Actually, we hear the urgency from you, and so we're just trying to move from there.
Okay. Thank you. And I'll talk briefly about the upper pressure plane study. Council, this is more of an update, certainly not as an urgent, hairs on fire kind of thing. The upper pressure plane study was initiated about a year ago, or not a year ago, it was late last year, first part of this year, and since then we've taken the opportunity this summer to put some pressure recorders out in the system. We recommended 6 locations, and 3 of them in the western side on the upper pressure plane, and then 3 of them in the lower pressure plane. If you can see it, there's a purple line on this map right here, which is a large diameter main, 18 inches, that goes through town. And so when your water comes from Kempner Water Supply, this is Highway 190 right here. There's a meter right here, and this is Highway 580 East, and there's a meter up here. And so you've got 2 entry points coming in from Kempner, and it makes a big loop going right through the middle of your city. Come up here by Hoff Power, and then down here by Spring Street. Anyhow, those 3 locations there were very valuable because we're seeing what's going on in the lower pressure plane. What's come out of this study is not necessarily the data we want to use to calibrate a model, which was my intent. We've started seeing some things that, hey, these are problems we need to fix, and we've been working with Van and his team since then to fix some problems that I think is going to dramatically help the city, both in water quality, the amount of water that you're purchasing from Kempner Water, so there'll be a direct savings there, and also hydraulically in terms of how much growth you can support in the upper pressure plane. So what we saw this summer was every time a little ground storage tank down here, there's a pump station down here that pumps the water up from the 18-inch pipe up into the Nick's golf ball tank, which serves that upper pressure plane. And that pump station is down in the old water plant site. It's kind of down in a hole next to the creek. Not the best place for a pump station because your pressures are so high there to get it up so high. And that ground storage tank there, when it gets filled from this 18-inch pipe, you can imagine, you know, a lot of pressure going onto the ground from an 18-inch line. That water just floods into that tank. And there's a control valve there. It's supposed to throttle the water back whenever it fills that tank, so it fills it up not too fast. It's filling up too fast right now. And what's going on is it's pulling the pressure down in the lower pressure plane. And to make up that water, instead of coming in from Kempner or other parts of the system, it's actually coming in from the upper pressure plane. And so you're filling the ground storage tank from the Nick's tank, and then you're filling the Nick's tank from the ground storage tank, and you're just cycling the water. And that's what's physically has been happening in the system, you know, I think for quite some time. And so ideally what you want that water to do is come in from Kempner and push all the way through the system and exit the system. So when you got this recirculating going on, it adds to water age, water quality problems. Something else that we saw is this 2 million gallon Georgetown tank up here. We took a look at the water levels in it over the summer, and that tank's supposed to go up and down. And when this tank down here fills, you would expect the water to come out of this tank to provide the fill water for this tank. Well, that's not happening. You know, this tank's filling at about 3,000 gallons a minute, but it's only exiting this tank at about 800 gallons a minute. So there's some old control valves in that blue Georgetown tank over there on 183 that have not been maintained or operated in decades probably. And there's also some inline 18-inch valves that are very hard to turn, may or may not be cracked. So we're moving pressure recorders around now, trying to determine the closed pipe that's restricting water flow in and out of this Georgetown tank. And I think the city's been fighting water quality problems in this Georgetown tank for a long time. And that's a lot of water to sit there and not turn over. You know, it needs turnover every day. So these things are being tackled right now as I speak. I think we've got somebody coming out this week to fix the problem here, and we're chasing the problem over here, trying to find that. Long story short, we get the hydraulic issues, and we've done a little analysis of your disinfection, your chlorination facilities at your 2 entry points. We're kind of waiting to see how the hydraulics play out, and I think a lot of things are going to start to be solved here just through some troubleshooting. Some good news there, you know. Okay. So, If you recall, last summer, you were having the problem out here at the sports park and the resident with the fluctuating water pressures. I've been told that the pump station out at the sports park is not necessarily needed to run that irrigation system. It's been cut off this summer, and the fluctuating pressures went away also. So that's good news. Okay? But anyhow, it was just a matter of an update. A little bit of good news after the bad.
Does council have any questions for the smartest man in the room before he leaves?
Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Thank you very, very much. We appreciate you.
Well, that concludes my updates. Any questions? Like I said, I thought you were talking about me. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Item number 7 tonight is discussion regarding amending the Chapter 78 Traffic and Vehicles, Section 78-219, no parking zones for South Highway 281.
Mayor, Council, during the regular session, I'll ask for a motion to pass that this amendment be made in regards to Highway 281. This request is for the life safety of our traveling public and our pedestrians in that area. We've received numerous complaints and concerns about people parking in the right-of-way and then pulling right out, almost having accidents. This will address where we can put signage out in the area that says no parking in the right-of-way, and then we can enforce when people do park in the right-of-way. We have discussed this with Street Supervisor Carlos Garcia in regards to signage. We think we can do this with minimal signage and also with TxDOT.
I'm very much in support of this. I've had several conversations as well. I've actually had a conversation with a couple of people who reached out to me after they almost hit someone weekend before last. My suggestion, in addition to the no parking, would be to also, what type of enforcement options do we have to prevent people from actually crossing the street? I've actually talked to the owner of the facility. He's in full support of that. He's reached out to the owners across the street there at that location saying put up no parking signs and enforce the towing. There's not a need for people to be parking there. That facility for their events offers transportation from another parking lot, but we've got people parking on the west side of 281 and running across the highway. So not just the parking on the right-of-way, we need to eliminate the pedestrian crossing of the highway.
Okay, we can look at that, Mayor, and address that in an additional ordinance with that as well.
Does council have anything to add to that part of it? No? Okay.
Okay,
All right,
thank you.
you. Item number 8, discussion regarding any item on the regular agenda. Does anyone wish to bring up anything we're going to discuss later this evening? Do I have a motion to adjourn workshop?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That is unanimous. We'll take a 10-minute recess and come back. We're going to go ahead and call to order the regular meeting of the governing body of the city of Lampasas. First up, Chief Bailey, do you mind leading us in invocation, please?
Please join me in prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the beauty of our days. Father, we ask that you wrap your arms around our community and keep all safe and keep us well and heal those that are ill. Father, we ask that you watch over our meeting tonight, you guide us, direct us, and that you allow us to do as you wish. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Real quickly, before we move along, if you are safely spread out more than 6 feet and wish to remove your mask, you may do so. Also, if you're watching from home and wish to call in for any portion of the meeting, the phone number is 512-556-0332. Under presentations and proclamations this evening, we do have a proclamation. A proclamation to designate the week of October 4th through the 10th, 2020 as Fire Prevention Week. Whereas the City of Lampasas is committed to ensuring the safety and security of all those living in and visiting Lampasas. And whereas fire is a serious public safety concern both locally and nationally, and homes are the locations where people are the greatest risk from fire. And whereas home fires killed more than 2,630 people in the United States in 2017. According to the National Fire Protection Association, and fire departments in the United States responded to 357,000 home fires. And whereas cooking is the leading cause of home fires in the United States, where fire departments responded to more than 173,200 annually between 2013 and 2017. And whereas 2 of every 5 home fires start in the kitchen, with 31% of these fires resulting from unattended cooking, and whereas more than half of the reported non-fatal home cooking fire injuries occurred when the victims tried to fight the fire themselves, and whereas children under 5 face a higher risk of non-fire burns associated with cooking than being burned in a cooking fire, whereas Lampasas residents should stay in the kitchen when frying food on the stovetop, keep a 3-foot kid-free zone around cooking areas, and keep anything that can catch fire away from stovetops. And whereas residents who have planned and practiced a home fire escape plan are more prepared and will therefore be more likely to survive a fire. Whereas working smoke alarms cut the risk of dying in reporting home fires in half. And whereas Lampasas first responders are dedicated to reducing the occurrence of home fires and home fire injuries through prevention and protection education. And whereas Lampasas residents are responsive to public education measures and are able to take personal steps to increase their safety from fire, especially in their homes. And whereas 2020 Fire Prevention Week theme, Serve Up Fire Safety in the Kitchen, effectively serves to remind us to stay alert and use caution when cooking to reduce risk of kitchen fires. Now, therefore, I, Misty Talbert, Mayor of the City of Lampasas, Texas, on behalf of the Lampasas City Council, proclaim the week of October 4th through 10th, 2020 as Fire Prevention Week. In witness whereof, I have herewith set my hand and caused the great seal of the City of Lampasas, Texas, to be affixed by my hand this, the 28th day of September, 2020. Do you want it?
Chief, are y'all going to be able to go out to the schools? I know that the National Night Out was canceled, but are y'all going to be able to do the school education that y'all normally do?
I think on a limited basis.
Okay.
I've actually spoke to somebody at Hannah Springs today, and we're trying to plan some different activities that we can do. The biggest thing is having them actually, having us in the schools. I know that's a difficulty. I understand that. But really, if we could just get 5 or 10 minutes in each class, especially with younger kids, to talk about those things that she just read off there with, and as far as a meeting place and exit drills in the home and stop, drop, and roll and that type of stuff. I mean, those are crucial things that you learn as a child that you carry forward with you through adulthood. So
Thanks.
It'd be nice. We're hoping so.
Thank you, Chief. Item 1.1, public hearing, citizens' comments. Any citizen who desires to address the City Council on a matter not included on the agenda may do so at this time. The City Council may not deliberate on items presented under this agenda item. Does anyone wish to speak on an item that is not included on tonight's agenda? Item 1.2, citizens' comments. Any citizen who desires to address the City Council on a matter that is included on the agenda may do so at this time. Does anyone wish to address the council on a matter that is included on the agenda? Moving along, minutes. 2.1, discussion of possible action concerning approval of minutes of the special meeting on September 8th, 2020.
I saw no mistakes. I would move to approve that.
Second.
I have a second from Mr. Clark. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
It is unanimous. 2.2, discussion and possible action concerning the approval of minutes of the regular meeting on September 14th, 2020.
Again, I saw no mistakes. I would move to approve.
Second.
Second from Ms. Toops. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
It is unanimous. 3.0 consent agenda. 3.1, discussion and possible action regarding the monthly investment report for August 2020. 3.2, discussion and possible action regarding the second reading of an ordinance to consider approval, denial, or approval with modifications for a manufactured home overlay, MHO, to an existing single-family 6 SF6 zoning district. The property is described as lots 9 through 11, block 24, 0.2380 acres of the GC and SF addition, commonly known as 1306 East Avenue H, Lampasas, Texas, Lampasas County. Item 3.3, discussion and possible action regarding the second reading of an ordinance to consider approval, denial, or approval with modifications a request for a specific use permit in an area zoned commercial C to allow for 2-family residential duplexes, SF2. The property is described as Block 3, part of Lot 3, lots 4 through 7, East Lampasas Edition, portion of Mill Street between College and Briggs Street. And item 3.4, discussion and possible action regarding the second reading of an ordinance to consider approval, denial, or approval with modifications a request for a specific use permit in an area zone commercial C to allow for microblading, cosmetic tattooing services. The property is described as Block 2, Lot 8, East Lampasas Edition, commonly known as 1002 East 4th Street, Lampasas, Texas, Lampasas County. Does anyone wish to pull any of these items from the consent agenda? Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Ms. Keeney and a second from Ms. Monroe. All in favor, please say aye.
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 That is unanimous. Thank you. Item 4.0, boards and department reports. This evening, we have Economic Development Monthly Report.
Before we start it, hold on. I just wanted to say thank you to all of you for your support, as well as my EDC board. You will notice on my video there's a watermark because every year when I do these, I don't pay to upgrade it, so I'm just doing a free video. So just disregard that in the corner. But I just wanted to first say thank you to all of City Council for your support, as well as my Economic Development Board. You can go, yeah. The mission of the Lampasas Economic Development Corporation is to enhance economic opportunities and quality of life for our citizens through strategic business retention and attraction. Can you do full screen? Yeah. The vision of the Lampasas Economic Development Corporation is to be recognized as a thriving community with diverse economic opportunities while maintaining our excellent quality of life. These next few slides will represent some of the efforts of the EDC as it relates to business retention, specifically during COVID-19. When restaurants were ordered to close, we created a list of all local eateries with information for citizens on delivery and/or to-go options, along with their contact info. They were updated frequently and distributed via email and social media. Frequent emails, weekly and at times daily, were sent out to a large list of local businesses with information on various COVID-related news, strategies for sustainability, links to information on government relief funding, and most recent orders from the governor's office. There was a lot of open communication during this time between our office and our business owners, and this feedback is from our business owners during a very uncertain and uneasy time was very helpful. We hosted virtual meetings for businesses with our state representative and our congressman where we discussed various relief sources for small businesses. The owners appreciated this because they were given a platform to ask questions regarding funding programs specifically. During the height of COVID, we also created infographics that had helpful information and resources for businesses and for residents that were struggling through the difficult time. We shared infographics breaking down different relief programs, and we also ran a social media campaign to highlight the resiliency of our small businesses and spread positivity during a dark time. We had a wonderful response from it, and business owners were thrilled to be recognized and appreciated. It also gave citizens updates on how they could do business with our local shops, and many of them have said they truly felt the support from our community. The EDC board, as well as City Council, approved $100,000 to go towards supporting our local businesses during COVID with a COVID-19 emergency relief grant. The grant was widely popular, and we were able to assist 47 local businesses. This by far was the highlight during this time. Notifying a business they were awarded the grant and hearing the relief in their voice was so rewarding. Many of them weren't sure how they were going to keep their doors open during that time, so this grant played a large role in retaining our small businesses. As you all know, the business park development has been a goal of the EDC for many years, and this past year, we've completed engineering of Phase 1 with plans of construction. The Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security CARES Act provides the EDA with $1.5 billion for economic development assistance programs to help communities prevent, prepare for, and recover from the impacts of the coronavirus. We're in the process of applying for the EDA CARES Act relief grant to assist in developing our business park, which would be at least an 80% match, but could be up to 100% of eligible project costs. We hope to have the application complete and submitted in October. Because it's a disaster relief grant, the EDA intends to deploy their funding quickly, effectively, and efficiently as possible. High-speed internet has been a challenge long before I started 3 years ago, but in the summer of 2017, we all remember the outages we experienced. At that time, the EDC and the City Council took some very important steps, knowing the lack of high-speed internet in our community was hindering our ability to recruit new business, as well as affecting our local businesses and how they operate. In 2017, the EDC chose Foresight Group to research and construct a backbone infrastructure ring in the north central part of the city that would connect to premises within 1,000 feet. Service providers would contact to lease infrastructure space with the goal to provide robust, reliable, and redundant bandwidth to our citizens and our businesses. I'm pleased to announce that we're now working with 2 providers that will begin constructing fiber within the city for businesses and citizens. Pole attachment agreements have been executed with both parties, and we're excited the businesses and citizens of Lampasas will not only have high-speed internet access, but options for their broadband service. We believe this will be a game changer as it relates to economic development efforts, business retention, expansion, and recruitment. This year has been interesting due to COVID canceling almost all conferences and workshops, but in early March, I was able to attend my 3rd year of the Community Development Institute at Lone Star College. Upon completing my 3rd year, I was able to sit for the Professional Community and Economic Development Certification Test. Thankfully, I passed and was notified I had received my PCED. I will continue attending trainings, conferences, and workshops so I may renew my certification every 3 years. I attended a workshop also early in the year regarding downtown revitalization, and I've shared these ideas and practices with our downtown business owners. And I've also attended meetings regarding the construction and progress of Interstate 14 and how it relates to Lampasas and the impacts it will have. Part of the downtown revitalization goal was mitigating life safety concerns in existing structures. We were talking with potential buyers for downtown properties, but the cost of bringing these historic buildings up to fire safety code was a hurdle for most. The EDC's Life Safety Grant Program, approved by City Council, was created to encourage private investment and commercial development that may otherwise be cost prohibitive and to stimulate redevelopment to increase sales tax revenues and property values. Since approval of this program earlier this year, we've given 4 applications out, we've received 1 back, and we've awarded 1 grant to a business. We've also constructed and installed a giant LTX sign as you enter into downtown, funded by the winnings from the Texas City's Got Talent competition in 2018 and 2019. We love seeing the various photos online of people from all over. They're using it as a neat photo op while they enjoy Lampasas. Marketing efforts this year have unfortunately been toned down due to COVID, but with the finalization of high-speed internet and the business park development, the plan is to beef up the marketing with those elements for the 2021 and 2022 campaign. The EDC did hire the retail coach earlier this year to conduct a study on retail leakage, cell phone data, demographics, and an overall retail market profile, which will be used in recruitment. In addition, the information was very helpful to local businesses trying to understand the best days of the week and the hours to operate to maximize their sales, as well as where, when, and how to market their business. The PBS TV show The Day Tripper chose Lampasas to visit and film for their season 12 premiere episode. Lampasas was the winning town of the social media Tripper Madness Showdown, and they came to visit the murals, the art park, the Hancock Pool, Rustler's Junction, Alfredo's, Eves, and our LTX sign. So this will air on Sunday, October 11th and Wednesday, October 14th at 1 p.m., but you can check out their website for a sneak peek. We also submitted for the HGTV's Hometown Makeover Contest. We did not win, however, there was a phenomenal video created for our submission that we may use for marketing our community. We also had a very large turnout at the courthouse as part of the video, with citizens yelling, "We believe in Lampasas." It was a fun project to work on, and despite not winning, we're still very proud of the support from the community and the marketing video we may use for years to come. So thanks specifically to Kathy Keeney and her students for all their help in creating this. We had an international publication reach out recently regarding the Lampasas Rising campaign. The article highlighted Lampasas and specifically how EDOs learned the importance of strong social media following and how to leverage your feed to help shine a light on local businesses open and available to serve the community. This campaign was created to show appreciation to our local businesses struggling in the trenches. At a time when there was so much uncertainty lying ahead, we felt it was important that the community knew how critical it was to support local businesses during the pandemic. It turned into these virtual high fives from our citizens to our business owners. Owners found ways to adapt and survive during a very scary and unstable time for the local and the global economy. They persevered and they discovered ways to rise above. We're a certified film-friendly community, which means we receive leads from the Texas Film Commission frequently for locations to film various movies, commercials, and TV shows. In fact, we currently have a film crew here from a well-known TV show that's been in Lampasas for the entire month of September. So not only does it help us get recognized as a community, the crews come in for a period of time, they stay at our hotels, they eat at our restaurants, and they shop in our stores. Small Business Saturdays and marketing promotion run nationwide, but we assist in getting the word out for local businesses and sharing deals with citizens to encourage them to get out and stimulate our local economy. This has historically been a big day for our small businesses and a way for the community to show their support. Prior to the pandemic, I was fortunate enough to speak with the Retired Teachers Association and discuss the projects the EDC was currently working on, as well as answer their questions regarding economic development efforts. Another group I was able to speak with was the Town and Country Study Club. I enjoy speaking to various community groups so EDC is transparent and we can engage the community to find out their wants and needs, as well as any concerns or questions they may have as it relates to local economic development efforts and business recruitment and retention. The next few slides will highlight some, not all, of our new businesses, but you will notice some have been here longer than a year. I'm highlighting them because they've either remodeled, diversified, or expanded their business in this past year. And to us, that's the mark of success, especially during an uncertain year for many. We love seeing our current businesses thrive. Sorry about the watermark. Thank you, everyone. If you have questions, I'd be happy to answer them now.
Thank you for the music that made me want to go to sleep.
Fall music. Thank you.
Thank you, Mandy. Moving along, 5.0 routine matters. 5.1 city manager's operational report.
Just a couple of quick comments, Mayor and Council. A recent WCID meeting, we did take the opportunity to kind of review the wet weather and how the dams performed. After we had what I thought was 12 to 13 inches in a 4 to 5 day period, and talking to Mr. Van, it's more like in some spots they got between 17 and 20 inches in that same period. And I think the good news is that the dams performed like they were supposed to. The dams on the western side, or where the majority of the rain hit, held the water to the spillway and then let the water out through the spillway just like they're supposed to. But relatively, pretty calm impact to the dams that were closer to Lampasas. So I really believe if you've driven by the Nash Dam, you can see how far back that water's backed up. It's a significant amount of rain we had, and the good news is that they did their job. Comp plan, just to follow up with you, we did have 4 meetings on the 21st, attended by 21 individuals. 2 goals, really. We wanted to reorient them and remind them about the comprehensive planning process, and then we also wanted to get their input on the vision and recommendations outline, which Council has previously seen. The next step, we will see an expanded, probably maybe even a 30 to 40 page expanded version of the recommendations. It'll give more narrative, more explanation, more action steps, as well as following that, the implementation plan. So that'll be a good roadmap for us. As the progress report indicates, we're about 82% complete, with December as a target date for Planning Commission and Council consideration. A health plan, I think Yvonne was very, very happy, and Christina was very, very happy to report that we'd received a rebate on our 2019 health plan because of ACA. If our claims fall below 85% of our premiums, then we're due a refund. That total to be about $27,000. I think it does directly tie back to having a healthy workforce and also, using the plan smartly, going to the doctor when they need to instead of the ER, and using the Good RX card. And so there are a number of things that they've taken advantage of. Campbell Park, we did meet with individually with Wings of Eagles, Outreach and LAFTA last week about their respective projects. This is really a starting point. We just wanted to double check expectations, what their ideas were in terms of design. We wanted to also take the opportunity to make it clear that in the event, what are the options in the event their expectations are not supported by enough resources? Or, is there an opportunity for supplemental funding? So we wanted to be clear about the fact that ultimately council will have to assess and provide resources for whatever the scope of their project is. We do want to, I know that there have been a couple of you that have brought forward some concerns, and certainly we'd want to, as we move along, express those concerns as a council so we can decide which direction we want to go. The next step for us is we'd like to get some rough estimates and then come back and visit with council about, okay, what would you like to see in terms of a design and procurement process for those projects. Personnel policy, and this is one of the many things that I referenced before in my comments on the work plan, another item that we're dusting off. We will be doing some internal review. This was previously done by the Assistant City Manager to update and address current trends and issues related to technology, record retention, time off, social media. We think that probably a more realistic approach is give it to you in bites rather than a whole Thanksgiving dinner at one time and expect you to try to digest it and make a decision about it in one sitting. So we'll probably do that over a series of meetings. Certainly if you have an area that you'd like to see first, let us know, and we'll try to work on that particular section or that particular concern, issue, or policy first. Library, just a couple of things. We want to, frequently I'll tell you or praise a library and their ability to not only check books out and keep books on the shelf, but also how they deliver programs, what they're doing in an innovative way to try to get people to the library and participating in different projects that they're working on. But also wanted to let you know that you still have just a couple of days. If you wanted to make a gift to the foundation, you'd get recognition on the back of the corner sign. Please, Shanda can point you in the right direction, and certainly give Judy a call, and she won't let you go. So anyway, good things happening at the library. And finally, just to report briefly, EDC met on September 16th, a relatively light agenda. Did re-elect the same officers that they've had previously. The other item of note is that sales tax is collected at about 105% of their budget through 11 months. So if it keeps on a current trend, it's a possibility they could be $45,000, $50,000 better than planned. Certainly we think that I think the trend will shift at some point with COVID, but certainly it's been a surprising and good news at this point. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Finley. No mayor's comments this evening, sorry. No new business this evening, sorry. Item 7.0, no unfinished business. We do have new business, 7.0. 7.1, discussion of possible action on the acceptance of the Chamber of Commerce and Visitor Center third quarter report.
Finley, you're tall.
Council, Melissa reviewed this with us in workshop. Do you have any additional questions regarding the third quarter report? Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to accept the third quarter report.
Second?
A motion is second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. That's unanimous.
And I just want to remind council that when I do come on October 26th, there'll be a different type of report, but we'll address that at that time. And I also wanted to thank Mandy through the whole COVID months that we've struggled through. The Chamber of Commerce has always been supportive of the EDC and will continue to be through all their efforts. And we've done really well working closely to make sure that all of our businesses are taken care of properly. And if they need anything, that our doors are both open. So.
Item 7.2, discussion and possible action regarding request from the Lampasas County Chamber of Commerce for hotel occupancy tax funds in the amount of $2,160 for event expenses related to the Hunters Tourism Promotion, September through December 2020, for hunting season and Hunters Welcome Event on November 6, 2020.
Are there any questions regarding the breakdown of advertising? Because I do want to note that we are, again, taking the proper modifications to ensure that the event is a safe event, and we are considering making it a quick and safe transaction by putting into place a different modified serving area for that event on the 6th.
Recommend approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
I'm here for a lot today. Sorry.
7.3, discussion and possible action regarding the renewal of the Chamber of Commerce Tourism and Visitor Center Agreement.
So
Council also discussed this during workshop. The two changes to the agreement included the changing of reporting to a biannual reporting and
also a modification to the verbiage in the funding where it says it's to change not to exceed the budget that's approved in July.
changing the wording to just the words budgeted amount. So,
With those two changes, I would move to approve.
Second.
do you have a second? Any questions or comments from council? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm really going to sit down now.
Okay. 7.4, discussion of possible action regarding the approval of the first reading of an ordinance amending Chapter 78, Traffic and Vehicles, Section 78-219, no parking zones for South Highway 281. Council, we discussed this during workshop. Do you have any questions for Chief Bailey?
Are we going to be able to include the pedestrian?
That will have to come back as a different ordinance.
Okay.
Make a motion to approve the
Second.
ordinance.
I have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I believe that is unanimous. Council, it is sometimes difficult, so if you are opposed, be sure you get my attention. I'm trying to catch all of you at one time, but just in case. 7.5, discussion and possible action concerning the second reading of an ordinance approving and adopting a budget for operating the municipal government of the city of Lampasas for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2020 and ending on September 30th, 2021, appropriating money for various funds and purposes of such budget, including appropriations of money to pay interest and principal, sinking fund requirements on all indebtedness, providing a repealer clause for the repeal of all ordinances and appropriations in conflict with the provisions of this ordinance, and establishing an effective date.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is just a second reading of the ordinance to adopt the budget, and we do need to take a record vote, please.
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. At this time, we will take a record vote.
Councilmember Williamson,
Approve.
Mayor Pro Tem Monroe,
Approve.
Mayor Talbot,
Approve.
Councilmember White, Councilmember Clark,
Approve.
Councilmember Toops,
Approve.
and Councilmember Keeney.
Approve.
Item 7.6, discussion of possible action concerning the second reading of an ordinance setting the tax rate and levying a tax upon all property subject to taxation within the city of Lampasas, Texas for the 2020 tax year for the use and support of the municipal government of the city of Lampasas for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2020 and ending September 30th, 2021, apportioning said levy among various funds and items for which revenue must be raised, including providing a sinking fund for the retirement of the bonded debt for the city of Lampasas and establishing an effective date.
Mayor and Council, this is the second reading just to adopt the tax rate, and it does have to be a record vote.
I move that the property tax rate be increased by the adoption of a tax rate of 0.395218, which is effectively a 1.08% increase in the tax rate.
Second.
I do have a motion and a second. At this time, we'll take a record vote.
Councilmember Williamson,
Approve.
Mayor Pro Tem Monroe,
Approve.
Mayor Talbot,
Approve.
Councilmember White, Councilmember Clark,
Approve.
Councilmember Toops,
Approve.
and Councilmember Keeney.
Approve.
Thank you.
Thank you, Yvonne. At this time, do I have a motion to adjourn into executive session as the City Council of the City of Lampasas, Texas will meet in closed executive session pursuant to the Texas Government Code, Chapter 551 as follows. Section 551.087, Economic Development. 1, to receive and evaluate financial information received from a business prospect, to discuss same and/or to deliberate regarding commercial or financial information that the city has received from a business prospect that the city seeks to have locate, stay, or expand in or near the city, with which the city is conducting economic development negotiations, and/or 2, to deliberate an offer from any financial or other incentives to any business prospect described above. A motion to adjourn to executive session.
Motion to adjourn.
Have a second?
Second.
Second from Ms. Monroe. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Mayor and council, I'd ask that the Economic Development Director and Assistant City Manager also be included.
All right, thank you. It's posted and discussed by council in executive session. We don't have any action items. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That is unanimous. Good evening.